Welcome back to Torchlight Tales, the channel where, thankfully, someone shares my nerdy side without making me feel inadequate for it. Today, I have something very fun for you, and first of all, I have to give a huge thank you to Survivor Fact Checker, at Survivor Fact Checker on Instagram, who provided me with the data to start building this little research project I've been working on. The data comes from the spreadsheet used on the video on Rob Has a Podcast, which you will find linked in the comments, so go take a look. But let's get to the heart of this video. I asked myself, who is the statistically most average winner in Survivor history? Let's start by defining average, so we're on the same page. First, in numerical statistics, the most average winner is as close as possible to the average values based on all winners. And two, in non-numerical statistics like home state, job field, personality, their answer is one of the most common answers among all winners. As I was saying, Survivor Fact Checker's document contains tons of statistics on all Survivor winners up to season 48. The ones we'll focus on for our purpose are age in full years at the time of winning, home state, job field, Myers-Briggs personality, whether or not they were on the right side of the merge vote, number of individual immunity challenge wins, correct voting percentage, meaning the number of times that their vote at tribal matched the person voted out, the number of votes received at tribal, and the number of idols found, as in not received by others and not played by others on them. I decided to exclude editing-related statistics from this calculation, as for example the number of confessionals, since they don't directly depend on the person or on the game, but on production choices made after the game. Now, let's look at the average values and how I assigned scores to them. Before we begin, I want to clarify that all the decisions I made were personal choices and I avoided calculating statistical significance mathematically, because I feel like my thesis writing days are well over, and to be honest, the goal of this video wasn't to write a scientific paper. But back to the topic, let's start with the non-numerical statistics. First of all, home state. I considered the most common values as those with at least 3 winners from that state. So in that case, Pennsylvania, 3 winners, New Jersey, 4 winners, New York, 5 winners, and California, 8 winners. I gave 1 point to anyone from California as the most common answer, and half a point to anyone from New York, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania, as well as 0 points to everyone else. Job field. I did the same here with the 4 most common answers, assigning 1 point to business, half a point to law enforcement, business owner, and healthcare, and 0 points to the rest. Myers-Briggs personality. Here I did something a bit more complicated. I used the E and P traits as the baseline to receive at least half a point, as they are the most common, while the other 2 are evenly split among all winners. Among EXXP types, the most common personality is ESTP, so I assigned a full point to ESTP. Correct merge vote. Here we need to make a distinction. You can be on the wrong side of the merge vote for 2 very different reasons. Either because you simply weren't aware of the voting plan, or because you were aware but chose to vote for someone else as a contingency plan to avoid backlash from, for example, idols or shot in the dark. In this case, I made a choice. Since in some cases we can't certainly say whether voting against the merge vote was intentional, maybe because it wasn't shown clearly enough in the edit, for example, I gave 0 points to those who didn't vote correctly and half a point to those who did. So this statistic wouldn't weigh too heavily on the final result. Now, let's move to the numerical values. Stay with me here because there's some math here. Age. The average winner's age is 31.3. Now, winners within 10% of this average, so from 28 to 34 years old, got 1 full point. Those slightly further out, between 10% and 15% above or below, so ages 27, 35, or 36, received half a point. Number of individual immunity wins. The average number of wins is 1.79, which will round to 2. So I gave 1 full point to anyone who won 2 individual immunities, and half a point to those who won 1. Correct voting at Tribal. Correct voting averaged 83%. Because these numbers were bunched closer together than age stats, I used tighter ranges. So winners within 5% of average, so scoring between 78.7% and 87%, got 1 full point. Those slightly further out, between 5 and 10% above or below average, received half a point. I'm not telling you all the exact numbers because it's a lot for me to pronounce as a non-native English speaker. Votes received. The average number of votes received is 3.13, so 3. I gave 1 point to anyone who received exactly 3 votes and half a point to those who received 2 or 4. No points for whoever received less than 2 or more than 4. Number of idols found. Here, I had to account for players who competed in seasons without idols, which means seasons from 1 to 10. For winners of these seasons, I assigned half a point by default. From season 11 onward, the average number of idols found is 0.78, rounded to 1. I gave 1 point to those who found 1 idol and half a point to those who found none. Now, before we see who comes closest to the archetype of the average Survivor winner, let's recap what they would look like. 31 years old, from California, works in business but is not a business owner. Their Myers-Briggs personality is ESTP. They voted correctly for the merge boot. They won 2 individual immunities. They voted correctly at Tribal 83% of the times. They received 3 votes during the game, and they found 1 hidden immunity idol. Now, you can see that none of the winners match it exactly, and that's where our scoring comes in, to find out who comes closest to these characteristics. But first, I'd love your help growing this channel, so subscribe, like, and maybe leave a comment. I'm curious to chat with you in the comments, so please let's make that happen. And now for the results, let's start with the opposite. Who is the least prototypical winner in Survivor history? According to my calculations, with 1 point each, it's a tie between Bob Crowley, winner of Survivor Gabon, Natalie White, winner of Survivor Samoa, and John Cochran, winner of Survivor Caramon. Close behind with 1.5 points are Tina Wesson from the Australian Outback and Marianne Okech, Survivor 42. Now, onto the podium. In third place, we have a 5-way tie with 5 points each. Vesepia, Survivor Marquesas, Tyson, Blood vs. Water, Natalie Anderson, San Juan del Sur, Wendell, Ghost Island, and Kyle, Survivor 48. In second place, we have the Queen, Sandra Diaz-Twine in Heroes vs. Villains with 5.5 points. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, the most average Survivor winner of all time. With 6 points, fully matching the prototype in 4 out of 9 categories and halfway in 4 out of 9 categories, it's Erica from Survivor 41. So, I know it's crazy that she's a Canadian and she is actually the most average Survivor winner, but that's what happened. That's what came out of my calculations. So, what do you think? Were you expecting these results? Let me know in the comments. That's all for today. Once again, a huge thanks to Survivor Fact Checker, without whom this video wouldn't have been possible, and a big hug to all of you. Bye!